We've all seen the flashy headlines, right? The ones promising this utopian world where your digital assistant just buys your groceries for you, or you pay for a coffee with a casual wave of your hand. But if you look closely at the data, well, that revolution is currently stuck in some major traffic. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a strategic analysis of exactly why this payment innovation rollout is so much slower than expected, and what that actually means for building the infrastructure of tomorrow. Let's get right into it. Despite the absolutely relentless industry buzz about a frictionless financial future, we need a stark reality check. Recent analysis by Javelin Strategy and Research proves we have some substantial runway left before these innovations become everyday reality. We're hearing a ton of noise out there, but on the ground, the days when AI agents completely dominate e-commerce and consumers are just breezing through checkout with a palm swipe, yeah, they simply haven't arrived yet. To figure out why, we're going to quickly break down the hurdles across 5 key areas. We'll start with the hype versus the reality, move into agentic commerce versus search, check out the biometric checkout delay, look at the embedded finance struggle, and wrap up with exactly why implementation is just so hard.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the hype versus reality. We're going to explore this massive gap between what was promised to us and what is actually happening in the market today.
There is a really fascinating promise versus bottleneck dynamic at play right now. You see, experts projected these shiny new tools would be fully road tested by now. We honestly expected to see these workflows live for the very first time this year. But instead, the complex retail landscape kind of amplified the challenges. So what we're actually seeing is a foundational building phase. It's filled with trials, false starts, and, frankly, a stark realization that we need some serious infrastructure reengineering before any of this works smoothly. So the crucial point here is that despite a massive wave of announcements last year, I'm talking new commerce platforms from Visa and MasterCard and Google dropping a newly developed agentic protocol, 2026 is strictly a building year. And honestly, that's actually an exciting thing. Those false starts we're seeing, they aren't failures. They are just the essential time required to test all those weird edge cases and build the underlying plumbing that these massive technologies absolutely require. Which brings us to Section 2, agentic commerce versus search. Let's look at our first major technology pillar, which is artificial intelligence in retail. Before we look at why it's failing to launch, we've got to make sure we understand exactly what we're talking about here. Agentic commerce goes way beyond a simple product search. We are talking about a system where AI agents actually shop and execute purchases on your behalf with very, very limited direction from you. It's basically the difference between asking an AI, hey, what's a good laptop, and telling that same AI, buy me the best laptop for my budget and ship it to my house. Now, AI is already wildly successful at agentic search. If you want a bookcase that's exactly under 26 inches tall and 38 inches wide, AI can rapidly digest that data and find it for you in seconds. It saves you from muddling through dozens of separate product pages, right? This is actively reshaping merchant brand visibility and completely upending traditional SEO. But the transition to agentic commerce, where the AI actually autonomously completes the transaction, is completely stalled. Why? Because it requires incredibly complex authorization infrastructure that just doesn't exist yet. Don Abgar, the director of merchant payments at Javelin Strategy, poses this fantastic, rapid-fire question that really forces us to think about the incredible risk of letting an AI buy things for us. How do we actually know that the AI's final action mirrors your original intent? And more importantly, how do we know the result mirrors your instruction? If it gets it wrong, whose fault is it? Yours? The AI's? The merchants? These unresolved bottlenecks really prove that a single provider AI solution cannot just magically sit on top of our existing e-commerce framework. We have massive hurdles left, like who actually has the legal authority to make the purchase? How do we firmly establish the end user's identity? And above all, how do we get consumers to actually trust this whole process? Guys, these aren't just software bugs we can patch. They are fundamental operational flaws. Lead emerging payments analyst Christopher Miller puts it perfectly. He says, just layering OpenAI on top of the internet as it exists is not going to work for anybody. And he is spot on. You can't just slap a smart AI layer over our current, frankly clunky, e-commerce framework and expect a miracle. The underlying infrastructure of the internet itself, specifically the e-commerce version of it, has to be fundamentally re-engineered from the ground up to enable software agents to do this work securely. All right, let's pivot to Section 3, the biometric checkout delay. Here, we're exploring a technology that isn't actually new at all, yet still faces a surprisingly slow adoption curve. Unlike AI agents, biometric checkout has literally existed for years. We all know the benefits, right? Stronger security and practically zero friction at checkout, because seriously, who actually enjoys digging for their wallet? Pilots exist globally right now. We're even seeing the launch of biometric authentication as a service platforms. So we all expected a massive inflection point in adoption this year. But progress is largely limited to just continued trials. Why? Because we have a desperate need for cross-experience, unified identity solutions. Right now, when you create an in-store biometric profile, that purchase data often remains completely disconnected from your online loyalty profile. It's a disjointed mess.
So, the absolute bottom line on biometrics is this. The capability is simply not ready to light up today. Even though business plans and go-to-market strategies are finally being developed, which, to be fair, is a significant advance from a couple of years ago, there are zero merchants in a position to just flip a switch and turn widespread biometrics on tomorrow. We are still firmly in the waiting room on this one.
Now, this identical adoption problem brings us to Section 4, the embedded finance struggle. This matrix right here exposes the exact cross-purposes that are currently stalling the industry. Look, you have fintechs on one side. They are highly agile with amazing vertical SaaS platforms, meaning specialized software built for specific industries. But they often totally lack deep financial expertise. For example, a fintech might foolishly pitch an interest-bearing deposit offer to a seasonal merchant in the off-season when cash flow is super tight, or pitch credit during peak season when liquidity is already strong. Make it make sense, right? Then, on the other side, you have the banks. They have the deep financial experience, but incredibly poor data integration. They just lack the capability to fully leverage the rich data these newer SaaS platforms generate. So instead of one clear embedded finance leader emerging and planting their flag at the top of the mountain like the market predicted, we get this great boiling pot analogy from Don Apgar. He says the pot is still boiling, with the fintechs struggling to figure out banking and the banks struggling to figure out data. It perfectly captures our reality. It's an entire industry still desperately trying to figure itself out. Bringing this all together, we finally reach Section 5, why implementation is hard. What is the ultimate takeaway from all these delayed rollouts? Well, the major strategic takeaway here is that you shouldn't view this delay as a failure. It's actually a massive strategic silver lining. The overall trajectory of innovation is still fully on track. It's just moving at a more realistic pace. This slower rollout is honestly a gift. It buys financial firms a critical window of time to adapt, and it allows merchants the required runway to safely experiment with integration before the massive wave actually hits. I love this sobering prediction from Christopher Miller because it reminds us of a universal truth in technology. Implementation is hard. If I could write one prediction for 2027, it would be that implementation will continue to be hard no matter what new tool comes out. It's so true. The shiny new tool, whether it's an AI shopping agent, a biometric palm scanner, or a slick embedded finance platform, is never actually the hard part. Integrating it securely, seamlessly, and logically into a complex legacy system, yeah, that is where the real battle lies. Implementation is, and always will be, incredibly hard. So I want to leave you with this question to really chew on. Knowing this rollout is delayed, what are you doing to prepare your infrastructure today? Please don't let this slower pace become an excuse to delay your own initiatives or get comfortable. Use this window. Experiment. Fortify your systems. Because as we've seen today, the road to seamless integration will always be long and complex. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time as we continue to break down the complexities of our changing world.